My name's Heidi. I live and study in Exeter, and I'm currently studying Spanish and theology. I was quite a confident child when I was in primary school. I loved getting involved with things, and I was quite outgoing. I didn't really care about what anyone thought, and whilst I didn't have the easiest time making friends, that wasn't really an issue to me at all. When I was in year 6, I started to develop anxiety, and the things people said to me got to me a bit more. I started to find social situations more difficult, and that got worse as I got older. Going through secondary school, that really intensified, and I also struggled with depression in my teens, which I guess was a mix of various things. That was something that was really difficult to go through. Towards kind of my late teens, when I was around 15, 16, I started to use self-harm as a way of dealing with my depression and anxiety. It wasn't something that I was proud of. It wasn't something that I guess I wanted to share with anyone, as it was with the rest of my depression and anxiety. I was quite adamant in not telling anyone. That wasn't something that I wanted people to know. I wanted to give off the impression that actually I was sorted, I was fine, I didn't need help, I was okay. But the self-harm was something that I used to deal with that. It was a really, really difficult time. Hiding that from my family was difficult practically as well as emotionally. There isn't really words to describe what it's like feeling like you have to do that to deal with your situation. Having faith was quite a difficult thing during this time, I guess. It wasn't faith as I know it to be now, but equally in that, knowing that God was there was both a comfort sometimes, but it also made me feel really bad. Like, how can God love me when I'm doing this to myself? I'm ignoring him. I'm not listening to what he says about me or life or in general. It was difficult, but I got to a point where, after some really, really difficult times and really difficult moments, I just ended up crying out to God and praying, like, can you please help me with this? That wasn't the end of it though. Self-harm is a coping mechanism, and what I was struggling to cope with didn't go away, both internally and externally. There were still situations, there were still feelings, there were still struggles that just, they didn't kind of, disappear in a cloud of smoke. And so I kind of had to find other ways to deal with that. And that went from, harming myself in a slightly lesser way to that I was, and eventually I got to a point where all I had to do when things got too much, when I started to panic, when I started feeling overwhelmed, I just clenched my hand in a fist. It kind of just turned into, in any situation that I found difficult, I got anxious, I would clench my fist. But gradually too, that got less and less. It was something that I was really excited about. I was really thankful to God that actually, I can deal with my situations now. Like, that's not something I need to worry about anymore. Like, this thing is a thing of the past. About a year later, I was in church. I was worshipping, really getting into it. I was loving it. It was just really exciting being able to, I think, have honest conversation with God in that. And as I was worshipping, I just felt my arm raise up and my hand clench into a fist, and I panicked. I was like, no, I don't want this. Sorry, I'm over this. It's not something that I struggle with. Why is this happening? And so I was just kind of like, right, I'm gonna calm. I'm not gonna let this kind of, spiral or anything like that. And I looked at my hand, and just as I was on the edge of that, about to panic, on the edge of that, about to just break down because I was scared of going back to this place that I thought I had escaped, I just heard God say to me, Heidi, I'm holding your hand. I'm holding your hand, and I'm not letting go. And yeah, I just cried. I cried because that meant so much to me. The fact that this thing that had been something that I had become afraid of, even when it wasn't something I was doing. I was afraid of the pain. I was afraid of the lack of control. God just turned that into like an affirmation of his love for me. He turned it into a symbol of hope and of peace as well. And he told me that he would never leave my side. And I think for me, my faith in that situation didn't necessarily mean that all the things I was struggling with went away immediately. It wasn't an escape plan. It wasn't I'm a Christian and I know God, therefore life is absolutely perfect. It definitely wasn't perfect, and it's still not perfect. There are still things that I struggle with, still things that I find difficult. But for me, especially in that situation, faith is knowing God, and faith is having confidence in a God who is there with me, even when I'm struggling.